Κυρίες και κύριοι, καλησπέρα. Είμαι Αλέξης
Good afternoon. I'm Alexis Papahelas. Thank you for being with us here today. I'd like to thank Seb for the invitation. We have two people that don't really need me to make introductions. We have Dimitri Papalexopoulos and Evangelos Mytilineos. And we're going to discuss what is being debated on TV channels. No. I'm joking. We're going to talk about things that are not debated on television and radio stations. It's the European elections, and these are critical. Let us see what awaits us and why they are of interest for us all. So, Mr. Papalexopoulos, you are in fact the host today. Thank you. A good day to you all. Thank you for being here. I think that we all feel that Europe is our home. I have put my tie, which is my Greek tie, but I do want to say that Europe remains our home. Now, we see that the world is changing very fast, so Europe finds it difficult to keep its pace going forward. There are many indications that things are not going well. There's long-term loss of competitiveness in the last 25 years, and this seems to be picking up speed, in fact, and it has lower growth rates compared to the rest of the world. Okay, this is also true for Asia, but also from the US, and it seems to have lost most of its hopes to be in the forefront of technology, or at least in most of the technologies. And geopolitically, it's lost a lot of its might. So if we actually put all that together, we are at a turning point, a critical one, where we need to really restart. So Europe needs to be restarted, and it needs to focus on competitiveness and growth. Because the prerequisite in order to have a stronger Europe, a more independent one, and I'm certain we're going to talk about that, the prerequisite in order to invest what is needed in society, environment, in the European way of living is defence. We need, however, to have growth. Without growth, we cannot do this. It's impossible. So this is the key message that we wanted to showcase in this event today. This is not being discussed either in the TV stations or in many other European countries for that matter, because this year we're not only going to elect the European Parliament, but also the leadership that is going to take us until the end of this very critical decade. So both of you have the same characteristic. You are the head of international companies, but you also have various roles in various European bodies. I would like to ask you, Mr. Mytilineos, what Mr. Papalexopoulos just said, that Europe is lagging behind the US and Asia in terms of competitiveness, in terms of investments. Is it something that is being discussed in the decision-making centres in Europe? Have they perceived it, or are they still asleep? Thank you. Thank you for addressing the question to me. We've said this time and again, and I've tired of it, but let's just say it once more. I go every month to Brussels. I'm actually meeting up with the Commission services. Unfortunately, the way that the European Union is structured, the key institutions of the EU. If we could have some quiet, please, from the audience. Thank you. So the way that the European Union is structured was all good and well for Lisbon in 2007, but now it's 2024. Nothing has changed there. We have a commission which is not held accountable in any way, irrespective of whether we actually ask, in fact, the fairest of questions, and we have a single market which is being disconnected because when the countries see that the EU is not able to be up to the task, they do what they like. I just learnt today that there was a 500 million euro subsidy given to one of the bigger steel companies so that it did not shut down the factory. It didn't ask the EU whether it should do this or not. The single market that we're discussing is collapsing. Germany has started this months ago. So, internal cohesion would be the matter that I would put. The internal cohesion of the EU together with the social cohesion, which is also falling apart. Okay, we will look at that afterwards because that's also a major chapter. Now we see there's a matter of industrial policy on an EU level. There is this awareness, slowly but surely, that the 2030 objectives are infeasible, and this will make us lag further behind in terms of competitiveness. And we see there is an issue of microchips production here in Europe. Isn't that something that is a serious debate? These are steps in the right direction, but they're not enough when we look at the size of the challenges that we're facing now. And this opens up another cycle of issues. I don't know if we'll broach them all. I think it's easy to agree that we need less red tape, that we need, in fact, more investments in skills, and we need to invest faster. That's easily agreed upon. But what's most difficult is where we have, in fact, conflicting priorities. And I'm coming to the point that you asked. Europe has defended and still does. So it is defending free trade, which was for decades the cornerstone of its prosperity. And it's considered now to be naive when the rest of the world, with the US and China first and foremost, have clear industrial policies which very obviously go against free trade. What does Europe do? It is defending a good principle, or is it making certain that it's not losing its own industry? And how does it do it so that we don't have within Europe, as Evangelos correctly said, the collapse of the single market? These are not easy things to balance. We have to look at things that are dissimilar. Another example, Europe has a competition policy for many years, and I think we could very well say that it was to the benefit of the European consumer, more than that the American one benefited the US consumer. But now that we have three blocks that are competing, we see that Europe, in many critical technological sectors, does not have the size of companies that it needs in order to be on a par with the US and Chinese companies. Telecommunications, by way of example, we have three major providers and one regulator. In Europe, we have 27 regulators and a small-ish number of companies. Where is the critical mass? Are we ready as Europe to say that we will look outwardly more and be more competitive internationally, even if this is to the detriment of things that we espouse as Europe within us, within Europe, that is? Now, another example, and that has to do with our climate ambitions. There are many, many issues. I think that as we speak, we will be able to distinguish those points that we can agree simply on, and it's a matter of implementation and why we haven't implemented them so far, and those that have difficult compromises and which need a lot of democratic debate. Now, I was reading also a speech by Mario Draghi that we've also discussed amongst ourselves. And what truly impresses me is the stats for the greenfield investments. So those investments that start from zero. And you see how far Europe lags behind compared to US and Asia. Why is that the case? So where should I start? From red tape. The licensing, the cost of energy. Where should I start from? In Italy, in order to get a license, in order to create a photovoltaic system, you're lucky if you need only 5 years. If you're not lucky, it's 10. In Canada, it needs only a few months. Well, that's what I wanted to ask, because you have investments in Canada and the US. Is it very different from Europe? Because there's an issue of red tape, shall we say? No, there's nothing. It's nothing like Europe. Everything is a lot easier. They're more business-oriented. In Brussels, everything's about politics. We don't do this in order for it not to be seen badly there. And this, of course, goes on, and it's perpetuated. So we have this Brussels bubble, as it's known in their language. A Brussels bubble where they all live, they operate, they invent things, and they receive a very good salary for doing that. And this just goes on. I insist on the fact that the problem of Europe is structural. It's not a matter of whether the Europeans are working a lot or a little, they're effective or not, they have innovation or technology. No. What should concern us in the European elections is the structure. None of the major political parties or groups, the European Popular Party, Renew Europe, have not even come close to talking about this. We need a new statute that will change the various facts. 17 years have gone by. Just think of the sweeping change that's come about. The operation and functioning of the economy, technology, innovation. Not to even talk about the political and geopolitical relations, because this is a huge matter. And Europe has proven once again that it was completely unprepared. Now, before we look at the geopolitical issues, let's look at red tape. This is something that Mr. Mytilineos has already put. This is something that we need to agree on, that we have to do something about it. Well, let me say something that impresses me. How proud we are in Europe at, as we consider that that we are super regulators. We see that also in AI, because we believe that we will play a leading role through intervention and not through generation. So I would like to talk about something that we saw amongst European industrialists. So in the last 5 years, 35 such volumes were produced. And these are 850 bills of law that pertain to companies alone. So, okay, major companies might be able to understand what this means. But what about medium-sized companies? And this is translated into Greece and transposed. And that means that we have a huge set of regulations upon regulations. This is hyper-regulation, and that means that we cannot keep up. The US has its own bureaucracy, and they know when to put a stop and go forward. So we need to have a systematic effort in order to reduce bureaucracy. And there, what Mr. Mytilineos said is that in Europe we have a policing mindset, because Europe started and wanted to create the single market, and they wanted to make certain that the Germans didn't do anything wrong, or the French, or the Greeks. So they have, in fact, seen how we can catch the offenders within Europe. But what we need now that there's so many changes occurring rapidly, we have to help businesses transform faster. That is the entire edifice of Brussels, which, as Mr. Mytilineos has said, has been set up in a completely wrong way. If I may, I would like to add that I would like to say that we are awaiting Mr. Draghi to pronounce things at the end of the month with a lot of anxiety. And we want to see whether Mr. Macron's efforts will in fact prevail, and Mr. Draghi will in fact try to actually head the next commission. That would make Brussels a lot more interesting. So a lot of things will change. So one of the things that Draghi said is that the policy of defense and energy in Europe in the last decades was based on Europe as its horizon. But now that Europe has developed its energy systems and its defense, it saw and ignored that globalization was proceeding apace, and it really surpassed us by a lot. The problems that exist now in terms of energy and defense are different in nature and size, and they're of a completely different dimension, and we're very much behind. And this is something that we must make certain that we know what energy means. Why is Europe structurally expensive in terms of energy? Because it doesn't have its own resources. We found resources now. We have abundant sun. We have abundant winds in Northern Europe. We have all of this. But are we able to have autonomy in energy? And the answer is no for many years. So we have to find a way to wean ourselves off Russian energy, which gave immense prosperity to Europe in the years of Chancellor Merkel.
So we're now away from Russia and we're nearing Norway. So again, Europe is depending from a small country up in the northwest, and this is where we get our energy. So once again, we're dependent. Once again, it's a problem. I mean, but on the other hand, you might tell me, you know what? We have renewable energy sources everywhere. So regulators will turn off switches because we have more energy than we can use. However, this type of energy, we have nothing to do with it. You know why? Because there are no power lines that will take it from here to there. That's as simple as that. No, we don't have that. I mean, the grid isn't there. So it's like you have a huge power plant, but we forgot to actually plug it in with a central system. And suddenly we see, after all these investments of trillions of euros, that we have to work on the grid. And this will actually cost a few trillions more. But the question is, so Europe went over Trump, and actually we understood that we were quite well taken care of by the United States when it came to safety. And now the second wake-up call was Ukraine. And of course, there's also the issue of COVID, because once again, we have Biden, who is saying that they're close to Europe, but actually they give all the incentives to countries to and private investors to invest in the United States and not Europe. So are we waking up? And also we have Monsieur Macron on one hand, who's speaking a lot of French and no work is done. Well, Dimitris, allow me. No, the answer is no. What you see in Greece, what is going on during the electoral campaign before the EU Parliament elections. This is similar to Eurovision. I mean, let's not blame Greece. Don't think that it's only in Greece that things are like that and we're uncivilized and the Europeans know how to do things and they are actually asking the right questions. No. Everywhere, people are talking about national issues and micro-political issues. Things are, this electoral campaign is being done on a very petty scale, if you ask me. And, I mean, I think it's a good thing that today we're here, this afternoon we're here to discuss and listen to things that are a bit different than what is being talked about around about the EU Parliament election. If you'll allow me to add something, if we want to be honest about what is on the mind of the European voter, well, there's also other people here who can talk about how Europe has shifted politically, but Europe was built, as the rest of the Western world, on a basis that every new generation will find things a little bit better. They will have a house, they will have a car, they'll find a job, things will be a bit better. So this social contract is null and void. Whether we like it or not, whether we want to accept it, this is no longer the case, and especially for the young people in Greece who have on their backs already 15 years of crisis, financial crisis, well, they see absolutely no growth, no progress, the growth and progress that they were promised. And of course, there's an anti-systemic wave from the left and from the right, and these people say, you know what, I don't know how or what I want, but what you're doing is not really working for me. And this is where we all have to say, the business world, society, the political world, that we have to protect the acquis, what we have actually achieved, and of course, everything can get better. So we don't have to tear everything down to build something new. And I agree with Vangelis. What is being said throughout this electoral campaign before the European elections is that, you know what, guys, what you're doing is not working. And what we are saying is that if there is no growth, if there's no growth, we can't do anything better. And this is not something that the people who are going to vote like. Yes, however, there is a trap. Because I remember what Merkel used to say. It was famous, saying that Europe has 27% of social expenditure. Yes, I think it's 7% of the population, 20% of GDP, and 27% of social expenditure. So, well, clearly this social welfare state that we were very, very proud of cannot exist if there is no growth. However, being against the system is actually not something that brings us forward. I mean, you mostly have a populist position. So what can we do to avoid having a European Trump? I mean, if we're talking about political leaders, they have to fully understand themselves that this is not the way to go. What we need from them is to have the political will and courage to accept. Yes, well, I don't see anyone in Europe fully grasping this importance. I mean, Macron tried to, but he had to change his tack very often. So I don't see this political agenda. Do you see someone promoting this agenda? No. Oh, so clearly you're not an optimist. I think we're here for group therapy. We hold each other's hand. Yes, there could be some, well, you know, the fact that we don't have high-quality, high-level political minds. This is, I think, obvious. I mean, the politicians right now. And you know what? I didn't mention Mario Draghi like that because he would be this would be a unique opportunity for Europe if Mario Draghi accepted this position. However, he fully grasps what Brussels means, and this is why I don't think he will be willing to take the plunge. Allow me to say something about Europe. First of all, when you are circulating we're talking about approximately 15,000 people. So half of the people who are in the building, and supposedly they are there in order to assist you in transforming political decisions that are taken on a political council or on a European Council or Commission level into act. But everyone's wearing just Ukraine flags, and everybody's talking about Ukraine and the war in Ukraine. I mean, every time when I go there as the president, the chairman of the Eurometaux, and I meet Shevkovich or Ursula von der Leyen, I mean, 4/5 of the discussion is about Ukraine. And when once I dared, because one morning, I mean, we were called from all over Europe. There were about 35 representatives of big industries and associations. So she came in the room and she says, okay, I have 40 minutes. Okay, fine, 40 minutes. And she started talking herself. And for 35 minutes, she was analyzing the issue with Ukraine. So out of the 35 people there, half their businesses are closed. That was 2 years ago. So they didn't have power, or power was like 500 euros megawatt hour. So after 35 minutes, she stopped talking about Ukraine and she said, so if there is anyone who is willing to ask a question, and I dared, I mean, I wanted to ask a question. I said, okay, let's open this up. And I said, yes, we woke up this morning very early to come to Brussels to discuss issues that are very, very crucial because we have to pay salaries at the end of the month. We're not here to do politics. This is a whole different discussion. Maybe we should take it on another forum, but you called us here for something different. And she said, well, Mr. Mytilineos, I fully understand the difficulties you're facing. However, you must know that freedom comes at a cost. And you are called to pay for that freedom. So the cost is incumbent on you. Well, I said, you know what? If you'd like to come to Greece, because I have 5,000 people that I have to pay by the end of the month, would you prefer saying that? Because I can't tell them that freedom has a cost. So when we're talking about this landscape, which policies are going to be transformed into action? Allow me to say that in the Commission that will soon be living, and with all the people who are experts and who work in Brussels and around Brussels, this is considered the worst Commission since the conception of the European Community of Coal and Steel in Rome in 1956. So we're talking about the worst Commission ever. Quality, work ethics, delivery, everything. I mean, the top priority, and maybe the only one, was the green transition. Green transition. That was the one and only thing they were talking about. Someone just shouted something. Mr. Papahelas says it was Mr. Margaritis Chinas. So Mrs. von der Leyen has fully understood by now that they have actually turned everything topsy-turvy. So in her 10 priorities for the next mandate that she hopes she will assume again, well, there's no green transition. What's at the top of the list? Defense. What's second? Competitive industry competitivity. So again, we're going topsy-turvy. So where is the consistency in policies? Okay, can we try to be a little bit more optimistic? Yes, because I agree with you. Every time I go into this wretched building, okay, maybe I shouldn't call it wretched, but in this building, every time I go, yes. Up until 2 or 3 years, I thought that nobody spoke the same language with us. But this last period of time, I think they are starting to realize what is going on. Because don't forget that the Draghi report that will be unveiled very soon, it was something that von der Leyen asked for. And I think that this was done because she wants to have a sound base in order to negotiate and discuss with EU leaders. So, and now we're talking about the Commission. Let's also bear in mind that Brussels' power is quite limited when we have 27 prime ministers and everyone is waving their own flag. So, whoever gets elected, if there isn't a wider understanding of what must be done and there is no support from the French, German axis, and if there are no other voices, that might actually be heard better than in the past. I mean, Greece. Well, I think but Brussels is not going to make everything change. Okay, allow me to understand. When you go to this fora, the French and the German Mytilineos and Alexis Papahelas, do they ask for customs and custom duties for the Chinese? Oh, well, allow me to say that they're much more courageous. We're very discreet. We're very gentle. Well, speak for yourself. No, they are really very demanding. And the CEO of a very big chemical industry, in a recent meeting, a similar meeting, he raised his hand and said, and he's a bit brutal, and he said, do you know how many regulations and new guidelines we received from the EU? 45,000. And what was the answer? I mean, was there someone there? Was there a politician? Well, yeah, there were. And the answer was yes, of course, there's an issue with bureaucracy, red tape. We have to get better on that. Okay, thank you very much. Well, allow me to understand. For example, there was a legislation of the EU Parliament about microchip production in Europe. Okay, and someone told me that if you read that, it was just a very nice precis. And also, if you left it at the EU officials to actually put that into action, nothing will ever be done. So, do you agree with that? Well, I absolutely agree, Mr. Papahelas, 100%. I will disagree with Dimitris on something. Dimitri, you said something before that I don't agree with. The European Council, and we have the chairman here, and they might say whether I'm right or wrong. So, and the other councils, they're the board of directors or supervisory boards, if we're talking about the level of European Council. But the management board is the European Commission. So this is where the work has to be done, and this is where things actually get tangled up. So the European Commission will get an order from the ministry, the Council of Ministers, and they give you something that might seem like a solution, but that's not the case. So, Dimitris, let's not underestimate the Commission, because this is where things get a bit... yes, but the EU Commission is managing 1% of the European GDP, and with 2/3 of this 1% of the GDP, they have to create infrastructure, defense, etc. And we have this big revolution that was actually a step forward for Europe, the RRF. So for the first time, we have European funds that can be earmarked for investment. But this is a drop in the ocean. I mean, the infrastructure for power grid for Europe, in order to have, but by then, yes, 850 billion. And we're not talking about defense, we're not talking about natural gas, fiber optics. I mean, there's so many things that have to be covered. So Brussels cannot really make the political decisions with the 27 members, PM of the member states, and of course with so few funds. But you know what? The UK used to bring what we call the common sense. Do you think that them not being part of the debate currently, is it a problem? I consider that both for the United Kingdom and Europe, what happened in 2016 was a big loss. Yes, 100%.
Well, the UK, with its specificities, as we know, they've never really felt European. They're completely turned towards the Atlantic rather than Europe. They are very much part of the cultural legacy of Europe. It's a very advanced country, whichever way you see it. So I think the choice of the British people to leave Europe in 2016 was one of the most unfortunate choices of people within Europe in the last decades. I'm very sorry for it. And from what I read, the Brits are also very sorry. Now, what about common defence? There's a lot of discussion about the strategic autonomy according to Mr. Macron, but whenever I speak with Germans or French people, they say we're very far from doing this. I mean, what happens with Airbus versus Boeing? Why can't we actually agree on 5 common points, which would lead to industrial output? I think Evangelos is better off talking about this rather than myself. But let me say something first. Europe is not simply having a small defence budget, but rather that's fragmented. So it's ineffective, and correct me if I'm wrong, 75% of this budget goes outside. So that means that we need to have 15 years pulling in that direction in order to fix this. And that is on the condition that we're willing to pull together in the same direction. And I don't see that this is going to be the case. So I'm not certain that we can have a common defence policy, a substantive one, in the next 15 years. So when Europeans say that they're going to spend on defence and that they're going to pay millions of, hundreds of millions, I'm not certain that this is going to happen because the public is not used to these defence spending amounts, because that means that you have to really take money from health, from education, and to put it in defence on the side in order to be safe. Europeans have forgotten this for the last 70 years. They left it to the US in order to call a spade, and they left it to the Americans in the same way that they left energy to the Russians. And what did they do? They actually advanced, and they were better off from one generation to the next. But suddenly, in 3 years' time, everything changed. And you're asking whether they mean it. What could they possibly mean? Do they mean 10 or 15 years? Yes, they do mean that. But if they start spending that money, who has the peak defence industry that can actually compete with Raytheon or Lockheed Martin? For many years, however much money we spend, this will be going to purchasing armaments from the States. That's very clear. Is there an intention? I see that there is such an intention in order to have the joint production of armaments. I mean, talk is cheap, but I'd like to say something else, Mr. Papahelas. We like to analyse failures, and there's many, in fact. Airbus is one of our successes, impressively so. And I think that we're doing much better than Boeing in many of the points. And I want to ask, why did Airbus make a success of it? And why cannot we create another Airbus in Europe? Because I'm not certain that we could. So I think instead of moaning and groaning, we should really look at how to best respond. I think it's political fragmentation that's to blame. I think the success of Boeing, Dimitris, Boeing or Airbus, Airbus, sorry, Boeing's not doing that well, actually, at the moment. So I think that the success of Airbus is the one that is the exception to the rule. And let me say, as an aside, that if we agree within Europe to pay the hundreds of millions that we're talking about, perhaps we should revisit also the Greek defence industry. This has been abandoned for decades. Maybe we should really look at it. If the Greek defence systems were really working, they could be, in fact, working 3 shifts a day and be generating a lot of money. We've actually paid billions in defence without anything remaining in terms of legacy in Greece. It's outrageous. You can see it for yourselves. I experience it. When we had ministers of defence who were ridiculed and went through many trials and tribulations, there was very concrete rules about this joint production and manufacture, but this was done away with. And how many Belarad did we buy? How many Rafale? With less than 1% Greek production. So when we're talking about a European-wide defence policy in terms of armament, what are we talking about? Germany and France? Where will this leadership that we are waiting for come? Normally we look to Germany because it's the largest country. And why do not market leaders actually involve themselves in politics? Because saying this is all good and well. Spiros Theodoropoulos said that the fact that I'm a good basketball player doesn't mean that I'm good at football. This is a different art. Politics and business are different arts. Yes, but when the market players are remaining outside of policy and politics, there's a problem. I think we should collaborate with them, not be them. I think that we need to have an open dialogue with politicians. At least those who are open to listening, or are willing, or can listen. And we should explain how the market functions and what are the problems that it faces. And then they will decide. Mr. Papahelas, you know full well that politics and politicians are the beginning and end of all things. But we are held accountable to our shareholders, whilst politicians, to the people, all people. So they are the ones who define all. I think it's the work of us all, and I think it's something that we want to showcase in SEV, that we all have to toe the line. And I see that there are people here who have been saying this for decades, that in Greek society, we cannot be, in fact, opposed to entrepreneurs. We cannot be considering that entrepreneurs are criminals if we don't prove the obvious. And for society to think that only the needs of this, or for the businessmen to think that only the needs of the shareholders have to be served. We need to build bridges. And this is true in the advanced countries. We see this in Germany and elsewhere. I think this is also critical also for Greece, and we see that there's a greater understanding of entrepreneurship and the interest in investments. Well, that has to remain. If you had to have a dream team in Commission that would guide Europe in this miracle and to be able to do more than tread water, what would you, in fact, say? So we said we might have Draghi at the helm. I consider him to be one of the most careful people, but we say that he's one of the risk takers, and that's impressive. Now, before I have the answer, I wanted to say that there was, in fact, a text that was read blue and black. Red is what you want to see from the beginning. Blue are the controversial you want to see carefully, or black are those, and blue, which you don't need to see carefully, they're simple. And Draghi responded to that person, I want more red. So that's impressive. So we see, I've in fact spent 4 weeks with Draghi's staff when he was even talking about the comma in a text, but that was a political statement. Well, what about the Dream Team? I think the problem arises from the European Parliament. I think it's a major mistake for the political parties in the member states to have the lists and for people to choose people with a cross. So the European Parliament should be the parliament of those who excel and not those who are the most popular, because we see that we have national parliaments for those who are popular. And there might be also a coincidence. They might coincide, those who are, in fact, excellent and those who are popular and they want to enter politics. Similarly for the Commission. We see what happens after the European elections, and we see who's going to take up what post is, in fact, a transaction that has been going on for the last few months. You support me there, and I'll place the other person there, etc. And somebody might have nothing to do with the subject matter, but that is of no bearing whatsoever. So let us not go far. I don't know Mrs. Simpson, but Mrs. Simpson is from Estonia, which is about the size of Patras. So she has, in fact, been having a great rivalry versus Russia because they might stop existing at a certain moment in time. And they're giving her the post of energy for Europe of 500 million, for whom energy is the life or death of it. So tell me the criteria. How was this done? So we were talking to the missionary Timmermans. So do you think that you have people who understand the true needs of Europe, feel the needs of the market, etc.? And let us say that Mario Draghi was never elected in Italy for anything. And we see that they might say things that are correct, but they might never be elected. Now, let us not be absolute. In the hierarchy of the Commission, there are also people who are very aware and know what they're doing, and they're very high up, and they do their job extremely well. But the system drags you down. And Mr. Papahelas, I insist on accountability. They are held accountable only to God and also to the European Parliament. The European Parliament is a lot stronger in that than it was in the past. I don't think that they actually know that. Well, in the documents it is. So let's say that you put a proposal to Ms. Jagger, and we see that's the strong person who is a force to be reckoned with in this commission. She might answer in a year and a half, if you're lucky. And we'll say that this request is rejected. Be well, and we'll speak again. And there's no Court of Appeals there, or any other recourse for that matter. That's it. I insist on the issue of the Commission. There is no accountability. They don't believe that they're accountable to anybody. Don't look at the 2 or 3 points that are raised by the European Parliament, and it will, in fact, intercede and intervene with all the forces that it can muster. There are thousands of issues that are processed, and ask any entrepreneur that had the luck to be involved with the European Parliament and how things shaped up and what was the turn of events for their business. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are now talking about the anti-systemic vote, and that the democratic forces, in the broader sense, are very much afraid of this vote. But which is that vote? What do we think of? What comes to mind? I think we're thinking of anarchists, to curious individuals, but that's not the case. These are people who have seen up close what we're now discussing, and they say, this system is not working. So I will vote a political party which is against this system. I'm not an anarchist, I'm not a fascist, nor a communist. I was always in favor of democratic parties, but we see that they have to be on the out. They should be on their way out, and I will vote against this system. So in 15 days' time, we'll see what will happen. In 20 days, we'll see how it will shape up.
Allow me to ask, what will be the next day after November 6th if Trump is re-elected? Because this is very important. Well, this is a different, yes, it is a different thing. Well, you know what, after June 9th, I don't think there will be many changes. I mean, we'll find an equilibrium. The thing is to see what will be the head of the next EU Commission, and let's hope that it will be someone competent and good. Now, when it comes to November, and I want to come back to the topic of today's discussion. So whatever happens in November, the stronger Europe is, the better Europe has worked on the issues we have highlighted, and if it has become more independent, stronger, more competitive, I think we will be better equipped to face what will actually happen over there in the States. So let's look at what we are doing here. And I know, Mr. Papahelas, I think you'd be better placed to answer. Well, I mean, you could share with us where you stand, what you think will take place. What I can say is that the differences, we shouldn't downplay them, but the difference might be a little less deep than the system is actually making us believe, either because the US deep state will actually resist, or maybe the differences between Trump and Biden are mostly about the style and not the essence. So let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. I have no pearls of wisdom to share, said Mr. Papahelas. Well, what I might say might sound a bit of an oxymoron or provocative, but what I think is that the single most important event that will be important for Europe on 2024 actually are the US elections. Because unfortunately, Europe now is being viewed through the elections of another country, of another state. I'm sorry, but I think this is where we've gotten to. Okay, but Mr. Papahelas, no, I'm trying to avoid saying anything, but, well, Kagan said that the jungle is growing, so we are in a global landscape where Europe is a bit waiting on the sidelines. The United States are exploiting EU, and with these demographics, I mean, we know that we have a population that is getting older and older, and on the other hand, there's China. So does Europe really have the opportunity to become a strong player or a soft player that is regulating things? Well, Europe has been built, I mean, the last few years, in order to live in a peaceful world as Dimitri said at the beginning, and taking small steps. So very suddenly, we are living in a very different world, and we are starting to crawl, trying to stand on our own feet. Should we create a European army? How are we going to do that? Should we spend money for defense, or should we spend money for the industry? Do we have to tighten the belt and reduce the budget? Or should we change our monetary policy, and from 2% of the inflation, should we accept even a 3%? I mean, so you know what? This 1% is actually all the money that the Commission has in its pockets. They could have more than so, and they could say yes, we can do that and that and that. So now things are a bit difficult because we're talking about the European elections and Europe, but let's not forget the European Central Bank, ECB. ECB is playing a very decisive role when it comes to issues like independence, and this is the real independence, if you ask me. Well, I'm an engineer, I'm not a historian, but I think that if we look at long term, there's nothing extreme. Europe will not become a museum. Europe will not dissolve. Maybe there will be another crisis, an even bigger crisis. But I believe that as democracies, we can evolve, we can grow, we have the necessary human resources, we have a way of life that everybody looks up to. And yes, we have issues with the demographics. I mean, and maybe we should start talking a little bit from another perspective about migration, because without migration, the numbers are very, very problematic. But I remain positive that Europe will find its way once again. And I would like to say that there is no way will be drawn either towards the States or China. I mean, the world is so intertwined that, you know, having Europe dissolve, there's no way. So you don't agree with the Economist cover that says that the global financial state of play will, well, I would like to say that I've been reading The Economist since I was 18, and trust me, I do not believe exactly all their predictions. Now, I would like to ask, I am a Greek who is going to vote. Why should I be interested about these European elections? I'm not asking you what to vote, but why is it important for me as a Greek? What should I look into in order to decide what to vote? I think you should find a party, a political party that has expressed a very clear-cut European orientation, a party that knows how Europe should move forward in the next years, a party that has confirmed its position. And you should know what are the parties that are into petty politics, like as if we were voting for Eurovision, because we don't want to go there. We don't want to be something like that. Well, that's what I think. Of course, I will not tell anyone which party they should vote, but please vote a party that has a political vision and say that will be exercising pressure, etc. And allow me to add that since we are a bit nagging about Europe, we need more Europe and better Europe. There's no need for less Europe, but more and better Europe. And let's not forget that we are a small country in a very difficult neighborhood. So the fact that we are undoubtedly part of the core of Europe, this is an key we shouldn't forget. And allow me to ask, you know, this new industry policy and the agricultural policy and this new deal, are there opportunities for Greece? Because one might say that a part of the outsourcing could be directed to Greece. Are there opportunities? Of course we have opportunities in Greece, and we have to fully exploit them. We have to grasp them. I mean, the condition of the current defensive industry for Greece, I mean, it's not worse than other. And I'm not talking about France and Germany, because I've been told that Rafale are the best military planes. So the French have the technology, the Germans have the technology, but many other countries around the size of Greece or around their pool, they have no defense industry. So we could really serve as an outsourcing. So, but does Greece have some kind of specialization? Do you have the human resource? Are you talking specifically for defense industry or in general? Not only for defense industry, but industry in general. Allow me to say something, and this will serve as a relay for you, because I don't fully understand the issues of defense. But when it comes to energy, in time, and as Mr. Mytilineos said, in a long time, this is a great opportunity for Greece, because after 100 years of importing all of our energy needs, we can become exporters. With what greed? Well, this is where I'm going at. This long-term vision, which will prove a great opportunity for Greece, I mean, we have the time from now until that time. Of course, there will be an upfront cost, because you have to invest in order to reap the benefits in time. And you have this transition period, and there are also many risks. And we haven't talked about the industries that consume too much energy. So energy-intensive industries, and currently the cost of energy in Europe, as Evangelos said before, is structurally very, very high compared to other countries. We're not talking about 25 to 30%. We're talking about 3 to 4 times higher. So if we don't take the necessary steps, Europe will be fully deindustrialized before turning green. At the beginning of the century, Europe had 30% of aluminum production. Today they have 5%. No, 5% of the needs and 1% of the production. Chemical industry. Chem industries, Evangelos also talked about them. Europe was exporting for 100 years, and now we're currently importing. So the energy-intensive industries are going through existential angst, and we have to see how we'll keep them alive until we cross this bridge and things become greener. But there is also an opportunity. This is not only a threat, because there are the industries who see that as an opportunity and say, I will be producing green cement or green aluminum. And they have to think about that, and they try to adapt. So yes, there are opportunities, and there are companies that are actually seizing these opportunities. Do you agree? Well, undoubtedly, Greece has the human resources as well as the competences and the people who are ambitious and who are visionaries. Visionaries not only on a business level, but I mean, the people working, the managers, the people I know, and I can, comment on their abilities and competences. I mean, our best managers are Greeks. They work in Greece, and they're Greeks. I mean, we have nothing to envy compared to German engineers or French engineers. No. But Greece is on a whole other level of growth compared to France and Germany. But let us not forget that Greece is a very special case, and we are in a very difficult neighborhood in Europe. And we didn't talk much about that, but in this current context, I mean, you see what is going on in the Balkans. We see what is happening a bit northern than the Balkans. You see the constantly worsening relations between the United States and China. You see what is going on there. This is why I agree, and I would like to underline what Dimitri said, that Europe for Greece is actually its home. This is where we should be. And of course, if anything should happen to the European union, well, we don't have the luxury to even imagine that. What will be the position of Greece if, for example, the EU were to dissolve? No, I cannot even start thinking about Greece with drachma instead of Europe and Greece without the European Union, because there we would have to face very different issues. The problems would be national. And we wouldn't be talking about megawatt power and whether it's cheap or expensive, and if the industries. So actually, we have the luxury of nagging a little bit. Yes, of course, because we are in Europe and we're all Europe-oriented, and everybody knows that Greeks are the most Europe-oriented compared to the other European nations. So I wouldn't want anyone to live here with a bitter taste in our mouths. Okay, allow me to go a little bit back and ask both of you, during the financial crisis, I mean, we've all three experienced having others from Europe looking at us as if we were beggars, and I had a very nasty discussion. I was talking about the chairman of the German industries and industrialists, and he was being very pejorative about Greeks. And I said, do you know that every time there's a big scandal in Greece, actually it stems from a German company? And he never answered. Do you agree with that?
Well, we see from the result that things haven't changed so much so that we can have greenfield investments which we need in order to have the growth rate that we need over time. So I think that Greece today has nothing to do with Greece at that period of time, but the fact that the economist that you mentioned before actually considered that Greece was country of the year. Well, that's impressive to say the least, in and of itself. But let us not sit on our laurels. So in closed discussions, but now you're talking with people who are at the same level as you. What needs to be done in Greece? Justice and public administration are the two key points. Do you agree? Fully. I think these are, in terms of investors, things that are sorely needing improvement. Let us not make a mistake. There seems to be a euphoria on the stock exchange in terms of finances, etc. Let us not kid ourselves that this is a true recovery of the real economy. It's not exactly like that. Mr. Stavros, Mr. Hatzidakis, and Mr. Mitsotakis have been able to tidy up public finances. They ensured these surpluses. And we have the 2032 prospect, which has created this great opportunity. So that means that the major players in terms of funds worldwide feel that they are safe in Europe, and they will be able to invest here in terms of the short term. They're hedge funds, they're not long-term funds. So how much longer do we have for this to change? It needs time and effort, successes and role models, and we need to have various units set up that are very effective. That's what the real economy. In terms of stock exchange, we're doing very well. We're number one in Europe. The momentum in Greece is the best in Europe. I'm expecting tomorrow morning a phone call by Mr. Mytilineos, but let's end on an optimistic note. So I want you to end on the note of I am Dimitris and I'm optimistic because both for Europe and Greece. You want me to start? Yes, please go. well, if it's going to take you that long, perhaps I should give it another go. I don't like to repeat myself. But last week, there was a very interesting discussion that I had with friends. And I said there that Europe negative, Greece positive. I believe in Greece a lot more than I believe in Europe. Even though we have a Europe which is negative, do you think that Greece has learned its lesson? It's a different Greece, that it has a future. Many things have changed for the better. Okay, let's not kid ourselves. But many things have changed for the better, but not so in Europe. Germany today is a completely different one than we had 10 years ago. It's, in fact, completely uncoordinated with the infrastructure that's falling apart everywhere across the board. Without money, the Constitutional Court has, in fact, shut off the funds, and they are really lamenting. There is, in fact, a coalition that cannot see eye to eye about the absolute minimum. You see what's happening in the rest of the countries, far right in the Netherlands, Hungary going on its course, Slovakia, which is, in fact, in its own dire straits with the Prime Minister fighting for his life, France, where Macron is trying to do more than tread water. You know, when things are difficult, the French like to show that they can stand out. How will these 27 be able to communicate in a world that is so complex and difficult? I mean, we've been speaking for such a long time, but we have not talked about this huge war in our neighborhood. Do you think Ukraine is so far from us? It's not 2 hours away in a plane from Thessaloniki, and there is a huge war being waged there. How will this come to an end? So, Greece is an oasis when we think of all of this. So, we have to believe in it. But let us never forget that we are a European Greece. There are no choices, Mr. Papahelas. This Europe, with all its problems, its moaning and groaning, bureaucracy, chauvinism, well, that's it. That's the Europe that we have to be able to move ahead. Well, let's say a few words about Europe first. When the going gets tough, you tend to look at your own ills rather than the others. And I think that we have really looked at the problems of Europe and not those of the States or China. And I think that we see that there are huge problems with in China. We see that the one-child policy has been done away with. Instead of, in fact, increasing, they go down. I have 2 children that live in the States, and they see a deeply divided society, problems that have, in fact, really divided the social fabric of Greece. We haven't discussed these. Let us not downplay the strengths that Europe has with certain acquis on the social level and a model which is expensive but does function. I believe that things in Europe will get worse before they get better. We do not have the conditions in order to have the relaunch that we want at the moment. But I believe that over time we will be able to correct our course. And in this European edifice, we have a Greece that has matured democratically, that matured during the crisis. It understood that it cannot consume but must also produce. But it has so far to catch up to. that I think that we can do better in the next few years. But there are two great impediments. 2027, the funds will wane. In 2032, we will, in fact, be paying the interest back, and we don't have the luxury of saying that we are on a jump board and we should, in fact, just go business as usual. We really have to put our heart and soul in it. Thank you. I think that this was a very interesting debate that cannot be heard elsewhere, even though these are very critical matters. I would like to thank the audience for being with us today. Thank you.